All right, everybody. So what we're doing today is you're going to be working on the home front of World War II. Now, we've pretty much gone through all the battles of World War II. We've got that information. We know we're going to win. We know, even though we really haven't focused on the atomic bombings yet, we know that is coming. We know that is going to be where we're headed to next week. And we're going to do that in depth because that's a really important part of the war that we need to make sure we study, make sure that it's fleshed out, and some of the arguments are made. Some things are happening in the world right now dealing with kind of the same concepts. The idea of weapons of mass destruction, and how do we respond to those? Should they be used? Or how should they be used? Who should be the targets? We're going to get to that. But today what we're focusing on is how do we win this war. Now, one of the points that I've made before, and I'll make it again, is that the Germans and the Japanese are worried about the United States coming into the war. They aren't worried about our military per se. They have guns and planes and tanks. They believe that they can develop strategies that can mitigate the United States getting involved in this war. They're not afraid of soldiers. They have been fighting. They're veterans. That's not it. What they're afraid of, though, and what Yamamoto, when we mentioned him earlier, what he's afraid of is getting the entirety of the United States involved in one single effort. The amount of people, the amount of factories, and the amount of fighting men we have. If we're able to kind of take those three parts of the triangle and put them together, that could be a very big problem for any country that is fighting us at the time. So we're going to take a look at how people are helping out this effort that cannot enlist in the war. Where we're going with this later in the day, after you've prepared, that's one key thing you got to prepare for, you got to plan for it, is that you're going to be creating propaganda posters targeting a specific person to try to get them involved in the war effort more. This is very important because these people that you're going to see cannot enlist. So they can't be the ones out there on the front lines fighting for America against the Nazis and against the Japanese and against the Italians. They have to be at home. However, we're not going to win this war without them contributing. Right? So their efforts are very, very important. And the other thing about this war is that it is a total war. And that's a different concept than the wars that we fight today. A lot of times we're fighting smaller scale wars where only a very small part of our population is actually really involved in the fight. During this time period, it's everybody, even kids as young as 7, are directly helping out with this war. And that's what we're going to focus on. Some of these people are going to be 7, 13, 16. How are they helping us out? So the first thing is you got to figure out who you have. You're going to get 2 cards. Right, I want you to choose one of them. Right, they should not be the same one. I want you to have a choice. So if you have 2 of the same person, trade with somebody until you have 2 different ones. Take a look at their backstories and then choose one. Which one do you identify more? Which one do you think is a more interesting person? Don't go the easy way out. But start filling out this information. What's their name? What's their age? What's their gender? What relevant experience abilities do they have? Take a look at their biography. Who are they? What relevant experience do they have? So the one I have on top, Catherine Cash. She's 27. She's from Buffalo, New York. She's a homemaker. She has 3 children, and her husband is in the Army in Europe. So we know that she has experience as a homemaker that aren't physically listed up here. So that's what I mean by inference that's made from the biography. Does she know how to cook? Does she know how to sew? Does she know how to do all these logistical things? Probably. Does she have a lot of decision making about what goes on inside the house and how much her family consumes? Probably an extreme amount. So then what we're going to do is once we've got those relevant experiences up in this box, I want you to drop down. Right, these are all the ways that and I'll redo this to make sure it's all on one page. But these are all the things that people at home, regular workaday Americans, can help do to make sure that we win this war. So rationing. Rationing is when we're in a war and we want to save certain things. So certain foods, like meats and sugars, rubber for the tires, so not going out and, as my grandfather would say, you're not gallivanting all over the place. So make sure you're not taking trips that you don't need to. Save those tires, because tires are going to be needed back in Europe and in the Pacific. Gasoline's also going to be rationed. All right, buying Liberty bonds, funding the war through these low cost or low percentage loans that you're giving the federal government. You'll get that money back eventually, but that's not the point. The point is winning the war with this money you're handing over willingly. This isn't a tax. You are giving money to the government to use, and then you'll get that money back later, but the big part is winning the war. Liberty Gardens. Remember, we had those in World War I. The entire idea behind a Liberty Garden is to grow food for your family's consumption wherever you're living. In the city, you can go up to the rooftop. But wherever you're at, grow a garden so that your family can use those vegetables and so farmers can concentrate on feeding our soldiers and the soldiers of our allies. The civil defense. All right, so now we're getting into the ones we really aren't either kind of, oh yeah, that's what that means, or ones we haven't gone over before in World War I. So the civil defense, what the civil defense is, so those that are tuned me out, you need to listen right now. What the civil defense is this. Let me see if I can zoom out a bit for us. But we've been attacked at Pearl Harbor. We've been pulled into this war. We think that the oceans are going to keep us safe for the most part. However, what happens if the Germans have some bombers that will be able to fly across the Atlantic Ocean and hit us? We need to be prepared for that. What if the Germans have submarines prowling off of our coast like we know they do? We need to make sure that people are prepared for that and helping out wherever they can. Definitely on the West Coast, this is going to be a big deal. And in Hawaii, Alaska is going to be invaded during this war, so they need to really be on the lookout as well for Japanese planes, boats, submarines, and just making sure that we're prepared in case the enemy attacks us at home. So that's what the Civil Defense Force is. They're the eyes and the ears. They're always on watch, right? People looking out, trying to see, but also enforcing different laws, like blackout laws. If you lived on the coastline, that's where it's going to be invaded first if they ever did come this way. Or that's where it's going to be bombed first if they ever came this way. So at night, we want to make sure that no enemy from above or from out to sea can see where our population is, or else they would bomb it or bombard it. So we got to make sure that no light escapes from people's houses. Blackout windows when you're driving, you drive with low lights. All those things are going to be a big deal during the war. Organizing scrap drives. We're going to need a lot of materials for this war. So tin, steel, rubber, newspaper, kitchen fats are going to be used in explosives. So rendering fat down from bacon or meat. Save that can be used in explosives. If your person is a woman of a certain age, so we're not talking about a kid of 7 or so. We're talking about somebody who can at least drive a car. They can join an auxiliary service, usually from age 16 and above, 16, 17. A lot of people lied about their age in World War II. They can join the Army, the Air Corps, which is part of the Army, or the Navy, to do certain tasks. A lot of these tasks, especially with the Army one, is the Army Air Corps, in which the ladies will either be radio operators, which is going to be a very important thing, or they would be part of the AirWAC. So they'd be air traffic controllers, or they would be welders, they would be people fixing up the planes or putting the planes together. Sometimes AirWACs would also be pilots. So if we're making a plane in Seattle, we need to get those planes to the air bases so then that the pilots can start training on them and then fly them over to wherever they're going. So some of the AirWACs are actually going to be pilots, and they're going to be flying these planes to the air bases so that they can be then taken over by the Army and then used, or the Navy, and then be used. So that's what the Air Corps is. It's an extension of the Army. They're not to be used in combat except as a very last resort. But they're taking over a lot of duties so that as many men as we can put on the battlefield are out there. Alright, work in a wartime production factory, that is a way. You got to assess whether your person is able to do that. Now, with the example that we have of Catherine Cash, she has 3 children, 3 young children. You've got to make the decision whether it is appropriate for her probably to be in a production factory plant. A lot of women are going to make that choice, but you've just got to figure out what you think about Catherine Cash from one paragraph, whether she will or she won't. And then generally do less with more. Don't buy new clothing if you can help it. Don't fix whatever's broken. Don't buy new things. That's basically the big thing with generally do less or more. Your decision, and this is really what it comes down to, your decision to buy that new coat is going to have an impact on our ability to defeat Hitler. Your decision to buy a new radio rather than trying to fix the old one is going to impact whether we can defeat Hitler or not. And just for a second, let me research this, and I'll be back. I want to show you my favorite propaganda poster during World War II, just because of how slick it is, and it makes the same point that I'm mentioning. Do less with more. And here it goes. Waste helps the enemy conserve material. So this goes all the way down into your ability to conserve pencils, papers, paper clips, ink nibs, different fasteners of all different types. Helps us to defeat Hitler. And the other one, just as an extra one thrown in here, let me see, I think this is it. When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. Join a car sharing club today. Again, doing more with less, conserving gasoline, those types of things. Alright, so once you've filled this out, right, you're going to then get a blank sheet of paper, and I want you to think. The first one you do, I want you to do is a rough draft. Figure out what they can do, try to come up with a slogan to really encourage them, and then some type of visual that you can put up there. I'm not going to be grading off of artistic ability. What I'm trying to do is I want you to step back after you've completed this and hand it to somebody and give them their card and ask them, hey, do you think this person would respond to this poster? Would this motivate them? Is this something that they can do? And would they be able to complete that task? Alright, I'll be back on Monday. You probably should be getting close to being finished with this by the end of the class. If not, we're going to take 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes on Monday to finish up. We'll take a look at it, we'll assess them, and then we'll move on to the atomic bombings. See you then.